Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador met with parents of the 43 missing students from Ayotzinapa at the National Palace in Mexico City. The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights denounced growing violence and death toll in the West Bank since October 7th. And Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov arrived on Tuesday in the Republic of the Congo in the beginning of a tour that seeks to strengthen ties between both nations. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos, and from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba, we begin with the news. On Monday, Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador met with the parents of the 43 missing students from Ayotzinapa at the National Palace in Mexico City. In this context, President AMLO headed a presentation of the work carried out by the Commission for Truth and Access to Justice in the Ayotzinapa case on the disappearance of the students from the rural school of Guerrero. For his part, AMLO reported that 9 search teams are working in the field, which have intervened 275 sites in 8 municipalities over 551 days of work, and indicated that this will be one of the issues that will remain pending for the next administration headed by President-elect Claudia Sheinbaum.
Basically, with these 2 commitments from the meeting on July 3rd, and he can build up this bridge so that the next government, the next administration can take up the case. But in terms of substance, we see no progress in the investigation. We are leaving without progress.
The Foreign Affairs Minister of Venezuela, Iván Gil, announced through a post on his account on social network X his arrival to the People's Republic of China. The representative stated that the visit has the goal of following up on the work initiated by President Nicolás Maduro in the consolidation of the strategic alliance between Beijing and Caracas. He'll also inform that the delegation will be meeting a wide range of evaluations and follow-up of the agreements that pursue the prosperity of both nations. In other news, social organizations and feminist groups in Argentina gathered again 9 years after the first protest of the Ni Una Menos movement. The main event took place before the National Congress at 6:30 p.m. local time, where all the groups that had been organized in several parts of the capital met. The women activists accused Javier Milei's administration of violating their rights and of not stopping gender violence. The demonstrators denounced that during the first 5 months of the year, there have been 127 victims of gender violence, of which 114 are femicides. In other words, that every 35 hours a woman dies in Argentina, victim of gender violence.
I believe that in the basis law we must guarantee the rights of all, women and workers. I think that we have to take to the streets, that we have to go out and spread the word, no matter what day it is. Because it's about our rights. If there's one thing we've learned as a movement, it's that we have to take to the streets.
In this context, the Social Debt Observatory of the Argentine Catholic University, an organization that has been measuring socio-economic indicators for years, confirmed that poverty increased by almost 10 points in the first quarter of 2024. The study found that for this period of Milei's government, poverty has increased from 44.7% in the third quarter of 2023 to 55.5%. This is not the only negative indicator that has skyrocketed, as in the same period, indigence reached 17.5%, almost 9 points from the last quarter, where it registered 9.6%. According to the study that determines poverty based on the value of the basic food basket, poverty in urban areas reached 24 million people, and almost 8 million are living in extreme poverty or indigence. We now move on to other topics. In Brazil, new rainfalls and strong winds in the state of Rio Grande do Sul have increased the water levels of the Guaíba Lake. New floods were registered Monday in the city of Porto Alegre after the waters of the lake increased their volume by up to 30 centimeters in 5 hours. On the other hand, gusts of wind of up to 50 kilometers per hour were also reported, causing the waters to move. The lake had reached a height of 3.43 meters over the weekend, its lowest point in more than a month. However, it rose to 3.79 meters after the rains that hit the state on Monday. And according to the latest civil defense bulletin, the weather tragedy in Rio Grande do Sul has left 172 people dead, 42 missing, and 806 injured. On the other hand, around 2.3 million people have been affected by the storms, and 617,900 have been evacuated. The bulletin reports that some 28,000 homes are still without electricity since the tragedy that began on April 29. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva announced an aid package of $9,800 million for the reconstruction of the affected state. Now let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, has denounced the escalation of violence in the occupied West Bank that has resulted in a record high number of Palestinian deaths since October 7th. The UN Human Rights Chief condemned the unprecedented bloodshed the people of the occupied West Bank are being subjected to day after day, and described it as inconceivable that more than 500 Palestinians have been killed in the last 9 months by Israeli forces and settlers. Despite the absence of armed hostilities in the region, the Israeli Zionist army has carried out at least 29 military-side operations on refugee camps and other densely populated areas. In this regard, the official demanded a cease to the violence and human rights violations and assured that these are lives that have been deliberately blinded.
Any initiative that leads to a ceasefire, that leads to an ending of what's happening now is of course welcome. We can only hope that that is achieved because the humanitarian situation bears words. We don't even know how to describe it anymore. It is beyond precarious. It is beyond catastrophic.
We stay in Palestine as 7 civilians were killed following 2 Israeli attacks in the town of Rafah in the Gaza Strip, while more than 1 million have been forcibly displaced. According to local media, 2 separate Israeli fighter jets carried out 2 attacks against the populated region of Kirbet al-Adas in the north of Rafah and the Saudi neighborhood in the west. During the last 24 hours, Israeli forces have reportedly committed 4 massacres against families in the Gaza Strip, killing 40 Palestinians and injuring 150 others. And in this context, humanitarian organizations warned that malnutrition threatens the lives of at least 3,000 children in the Gaza Strip. The United Nations Children's Fund reported that the escalation of Israeli hostilities in Gaza has had a catastrophic toll on children and their families. Expanding on this statement, UNICEF informed that thousands of children under the age of 5 suffer from malnutrition, as many of them have nothing to eat even for a full day. In view of the situation, the government of Gaza stressed that children need a radical and immediate response to all the crises to which they are being systematically exposed by the Israeli occupation, the most pressing ones being the lack of food and medical care. We stay in Palestine as the Information Office of the Gazan authorities revealed that the Israeli occupation forces have dropped a total of 78,000 tons of bombs in the Gaza Strip since the onset of the aggression in October 2023. According to the briefing released on Monday, 240 days after the beginning of the aggression, the attacks have reportedly caused $33 billion worth of economic damage in the Gaza Strip. The report also informed that 1,095,000 Gazans suffered from infectious diseases as a result of experiencing constant displacement and poor living conditions. In other news, in Syria, at least 17 people were killed by Israeli forces in an attack on Sunday night in the city of Aleppo. The Syrian Ministry of Defense reported that the attack by the Tel Aviv regime took place from Tanef, an area occupied by Washington's support groups, in the direction of several positions and facilities in Damascus. The Syrian authorities also indicated that the bombardment generated several material losses in the territory. In view of the situation, the Syrian Ministry of Defense denounced these actions as a violation of its sovereignty and international law, and urged the United Nations Security Council to comply with putting an end to Israeli aggressions. The Parliament of Georgia enacted the law on transparency of foreign influence, with which it seeks to curb Western interference. Despite the condemnation of the European Union and the United States officials, the law was signed by the President of the Parliament, Shalva Papuashvili, after being approved by 84 votes to 4, thus overcoming the presidential veto. The law obliges all non-governmental organizations and media outlets that receive more than 20% of their income from other countries to register with the Georgia Ministry of Justice.
Today, I signed a law aimed at reducing radicalization, polarization, and disinformation in Georgia. At the same time, the radical parties will sign the charter introduced today by the President, which is rightly called a war charter, as it brings together the radical groups that have been pushing Georgia towards war by various means over the past 2 years.
For his part, Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Kobakidze stressed that with the approval of the law on transparency, the people of Georgia, its sovereignty, and its security have won.
We should not consider the approval of the law on transparency as a victory for the government, nor as a defeat for the opponents of the law. Neither should we consider the approval of the law as a defeat for our international partners, as they often try to present it. With the approval of the law on transparency, only Georgia, its sovereignty, and its security have won.
And farmers in Spain and France blocked 8 border crossings between the two countries to demand changes in agricultural policies. The demonstrators indicated that they plan to maintain the blockade until the morning of Tuesday, June 4th. The demonstrators are demanding from the government of both countries physical fuel rebates, prioritizing local products, and also greater protection against competition from countries outside the European Union. Now we have a final short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and also share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back from the south. In India, after 44 days of voting in the world's largest electoral process, the party of Prime Minister Narendra Modi leads in the counting of ballots. When 41% of the votes have been counted, the expected winner is likely to be the leader of the Bharatiya Janata Party. In this regard, the body conducting the electoral process reported on a record number of votes in favor of the government. The preliminary outcome points to a third term in office for the Hindu leader. During the election process that lasted for over 6 weeks and was divided into 7 phases, a record number of 642 million citizens reportedly cast their votes.
We are definitely certain, and just not me, you ask any Indian standing here or elsewhere, they'll tell you Modi is coming back. So we want Modi to come back. So that's the thing, yeah.
The kind of developments we've had in the past 10 years, I believe it's going to be just a level higher this time. It could be his last tenure, so that is why we believe that this time it's going to be the most of it.
And tensions on the Korean peninsula rise as South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol fully suspended the 2018 military agreement with the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. On a working-level meeting held in Seoul on Monday, the country's National Security Council decided the suspension of the pact signed after a brief dialogue with Pyongyang in 2018. As a result, on Tuesday, the head of state, Yoon Suk-yeol, endorsed the motion to call off the agreement. Tensions have increased in the region after South Korean authorities accused the Democratic People's Republic of Korea of meddling with their navigation systems around the islands of the Yellow Sea. And the head of Russian diplomacy, Sergei Lavrov, arrived on Tuesday in the Republic of the Congo to begin an intensive tour within the framework of the 60th anniversary of relations between both nations. The foreign minister was received in the capital, Brazzaville, but meetings and negotiations between him and Congolese authorities will be held in Oyo, in the center of the African nation. It is expected that during this visit, the two countries will consolidate friendly ties and discuss new projects related to the energy sector. Last year, within the framework of the 60th anniversary of the establishment of relations, Russian President Vladimir Putin and the Congolese President Denis Sassou met in July. On Tuesday, the Ukrainian government informed that Western weapons have already been used against Russian territory. In this regard, Irina Bereshchuk, Deputy Minister for the Reintegration of the Temporarily Occupied Territories, said that weaponry provided by Western allies hit a Russian long-range surface-to-air missile system. Bereshchuk explained that the attack was carried out only hours after she had been granted permission from Western partners to proceed. In this scenario, the Kremlin government has repeatedly denounced NATO support for Kiev's use of these weapons, with Moscow authorities warning about the consequences of involving third countries in the conflict. And the Russian government denounced that the presence of foreign servicemen in Ukrainian sabotage groups proves the involvement of the West in terrorist activities against Moscow. The head of the Russian delegation to the negotiations in Vienna on military security and arms control, Konstantin Gavrilov, assured that 92 sabotage groups are operating in Ukraine, among them 14 Americans, U.S. citizens, who are allegedly staying in that territory as mercenaries and instructors. Gavrilov denounced that these groups are actually engaged in planning terrorist operations against Russia, while he condemned the decision of several countries allied to Kiev, whose authorities stated that they would allow the use of their airspace to attack Russian territory. The Russian Defense Ministry estimates that at least 13,387 foreign mercenaries have arrived in Ukraine since the end of February 2022. And let's go to cultural news. In Spain, the 83rd edition of the book fair dedicated to sports under the slogan "Train Your Mind, Read Your Body" is underway. The event presents around 200,000 different titles and close to 1 million copies, and is developed around 2 thematic axes. The first is is a contact sport, which understands the sport as a metaphor for work. The second axis is somewhere on the court, which addresses sport as used to talk about culture, politics, emotions, and memories of history. In this sense, conferences, dialogues, workshops, and other special activities will take place until June 16th.
It's a meeting place for readers. The annual book festival. I'm always excited to go, and since I live in Madrid, the Madrid Book Fair is like playing at home.
Going to a signing is an experience that gives you a lot of illusion, because in the end, you personify a book that you have read, and that's you feel a lot, and it makes you feel very excited.
It is a great opportunity. We meet with clients who can't come to the bookstore as much as they would like, or with people who follow us on social networks, or people who don't know the project. And thanks to the meeting here at the stand, they learn what Bergamo is, who is behind the project.
And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and also on TikTok. For teleSUR English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.